Welcome to this new episode of our show. Today we have the pleasure of having with us Lorenzo Boscolo. Lorenzo is the head of supply chain Italy for group, and together with his team is responsible for basically the strategy and execution of the company's supply chain processes. As probably people in the audience know, one of the main players in the global spirits industry. He's born and raised in Italy, studies in management engineering in Florence and Bologna, worked for 7 years as a strategy consultant for various firms, and before served as the supply chain director for the retail and restaurant chain Italy in New York City, overseeing operations in both US and Canada. So Lorenzo's got a really experience relevant for the topics that we are going to discuss together, Lorenzo, in the show. But maybe before we jump straight on the topic of the future of value chains, maybe you can add some color to the biography I just read.
Yes, Paolo, I'm happy to be here with you guys and to share something about the today's topics. You described very well my career. I'm a management engineer, did in Italy, born and raised in Italy. Then I was a consultant, a management consultant for a few years, during which I helped companies build their supply chains and revolution their supply chains. And I was really passionate about this. I'm really into the supply chain and operations area, and I'm in particular specialized in the food and beverage sector. So I have a vertical knowledge in the food and beverage sector. After that, I decided, as you said, to move to another experience. I was a little bit tired of suggesting other companies what to do. I wanted to start taking my decisions with my team and my supply chain. So I moved to New York City to be the supply chain director for Italy, the food company. As you said, Italy is the biggest Italian food retailer in the world.
Outside Italy, yeah.
And in the stores there are also big restaurants, Italian restaurants. I really loved bringing the Italian culture and the Italian food
Around the world.
around the world. It was really a mission for me, and I was really passionate about that. We did great things while I was there. Also during COVID period, I was there, so we had to face a lot of challenges for both professionals and professional.
What a nice period, the COVID, for supply chain directors, right?
That was, yeah, you can say it out loud, and especially shipping goods from Italy to the United States. That was a real challenge. And then for personal and professional reasons, I wanted to have another challenge. I wanted to work for a manufacturing company, not only a retail and restaurants company. I wanted to explore another sector, another part of the food and beverage sector. So I moved back to Italy. I love my country, so now I'm based in Milan, and I'm the head of supply chain for the group.
Fantastic.
So thanks for being here, Lorenzo. I think that's an amazing experience that you collected like over the years. So yeah, you mentioned the COVID, but actually, in the recent years, we can't say that only one thing happened in X years, but maybe several things happening like in the same year, from coronavirus. Then we had several geopolitical tensions and tariffs and such a lot of things really affecting supply chain, especially creating disruptions and tensions and fluctuability scenarios where chains has to be like flexible to avoid those disruption and ensure the business. So probably we are noticing like a post-globalization trends. That doesn't mean globalization is over, but meaning maybe something else. Maybe in terms of market and economy, there's a real sense of globalization, but maybe there's a more attention to a local scenario, a local to local like approach, so to avoid this disruption to a regionalization. Can you notice that? What do you see in terms of globalization?
You couldn't use better words actually, because this is exactly what's happening and what I see happening. Until 2020, companies went through a process that I like to call wild globalization of supply chains. So a lot of companies delocalized, changed their sources, and they were convinced that could also in the food and beverage sector, their goods could easily reach any place at any time with total control and no restrictions, focusing only in efficiency, so saving money, which is obviously cool for a supply chain. But after 2020, a few things happened, made this switch. No, they made the companies change their mind, and you mentioned the majority of them. COVID first. COVID was a massive disruption of supply chains, but also geopolitical tension, the Ukraine war, the Middle East. Tensions, Taiwan, etc. And then there was another episode I think it's worth to mention, which was seems small, but it's curious to see how this episode clogged global supply chains. If you remember, at a certain point, a vessel remained stuck in the Suez Canal, which seems something you say, okay, come on, let's remove this vessel and move on. And that simple episode created a lot of issues in global supply chain. So all companies, especially multinational companies, they realized that focusing only on efficiency was not the right strategy. So they started to prioritize resilience over efficiency, moving to a deglobalization and regionalization of supply chains. Now companies are doing a lot of things. We'll probably go more into details later to activate closer supply sources and different alternatives to reach their final customers. As you said, this doesn't mean we stop the globalization. It's just change the way we do it. And for purely supply chains, probably the globalization is taking a step, I don't want to say back, but in another direction, let's say.
Yeah, it's an evolution of globalization, right? I guess if you look at the kind of a classic metrics that are used to measure globalization in terms of, flow of capital, flow of people, flow of trade, globalization keeps growing. But of course, there are, I guess, new trends, regionalization, being one of them that I guess create the conditions for different approaches to supply chains. Something I wanted to ask you, Lorenzo, is when you think about these drivers, these factors, do they have, in your opinion, the same weight, or are there basically drivers that, in your opinion, are today particularly impacting, thinking evolution of global value chains?
So thinking about today and the different drivers that are impacting the evolution of global value chains, yes, some are more impactful than others in this particular historical moment. As we already mentioned, the geopolitical tensions, I think other additional tensions keep adding more and more into this.
We wish that for the next season the world is in a better place.
Exactly,
But for this first season,
we really do,
the
because
geopolitical context is quite tricky.
geopolitical tensions often don't bring only to supply chain problems, but also to wars, which we really don't want to. And so yes, we really wish so. And other geopolitical tensions keep adding on and on. US and China, Russia versus almost everyone else, Iran, that now seems to be a little bit better, etc., etc. So this is probably the most impactful, together with another one that we still didn't mention, but it's probably in these very few days the most important, which is the tariffs. We all heard on the news what is the position of President Trump about tariffs, and we can debate if this is right or not, but it's not the object of
Or at
today.
least what is the daily position?
Exactly. So tomorrow we could be talking about something else, but for sure these tariffs will bring a lot of uncertainty together with the counter tariffs that the other countries will have to pose, European Union, China, the other countries, doing forecasting what will happen in the next few years, it's really, really, really difficult. For sure, what President Trump wants to do will happen. There will be a lot of repercussions, a lot of changes in global value chains, because a lot of goods, especially in the food and beverage sector, will have to stop being moved around. Some other, and all the other products will have an increase in price. So it's very, very difficult to say what will happen, but this is for sure one of the most impactful key drivers, artificial intelligence. How not to mention that the application of new technologies and of artificial intelligence, in my opinion, will revolution everything in the next years. Environment, social and governance policy as well.
I was going to get there. Yeah.
The
No, actually,
attention.
this is something I would like you to elaborate on, Lorenzo, because I think the topic of sustainability is a hot topic. As you know, I'm very passionate, about
It
this,
is.
being a professor specialized in that field. But I guess the reality is that when I look at many organizations I've worked with or work with, they have spent really the last decade, I guess, addressing sustainability at the corporate level. But now, it's becoming a supply chain topic. So maybe, you can you can elaborate on this and in terms of how ESG factors are becoming relevant in supply chain strategies.
Of course, of course. Yes, I think, as you said, the companies have been thinking about it and doing something about it in the last 10 years. Now, I think now sustainability, it's really becoming something real. Something, I mean, it has always been, but
Yeah.
now it's not anymore a topic for a niche and for a few people to discuss. It's something real. I mean, all the extreme weather events, a lot of things that are happening, and the attention that fortunately governments are putting into that are making this a real thing. Companies now need to demonstrate, especially the ones that are listed in the public markets. They need to demonstrate,
Of
and
course.
this is right. They need to demonstrate that they are respecting some criterias. In particular, if we want to go a little bit more into the specifics, I think the main topic for supply chains and sustainability is greenhouse emissions. So logistics and manufacturing, but if we want to talk about logistics, moving goods around via ocean, land, and rail, it's one of the major contributors to greenhouse emissions. And public opinion, consumer attention as well is more and more focused on this. And companies, they have also to do reports, to report, as I said, what they do. So
If I can jump in on this, I would like to ask you, your perspective on something. Last year, I think it was around June, so June 2024, there was a piece of research that was released by McKinsey that was looking at the American market. And it was an interesting piece of research that I guess got a lot of attention and created some rumor as well, because they were suggesting that in the US, something like more than 60% of big corporate clients are ready to pay more for green logistics services. This was something that was very new, and I guess the underlying probably message was the fact that these big corporations had set emissions targets for decarbonization. In the moment that these deadlines are approaching, they start, I guess, again, as you said,
they start
being more
thinking.
real about it, doing something about it, and that's when you say, okay, maybe purchasing, green logistics services is a I don't know if it's an easy win, but it's a quick win. I'm wondering, what's your take on that? Do you see, that behavior in Europe as well?
Yes, in Europe, probably even more than in the US. I don't know the exact data, but yes, this is the trend that I saw in the market.
Interesting.
What I see, though, unfortunately, that this is still something more related to big companies. big multinational
Yes.
companies. I don't know what's your opinion on that, but this is
No,
what
no,
I
I
see
agree.
in Europe. Probably for a series of reasons, mainly because big companies are more exposed, especially if they are listed in the market. They have to demonstrate, they have to do ESG reports, etc. And also probably because they have more money to invest on that.
That
I
could
think
be the case.
the shift that must happen in the next few years is that ESG, sustainability, green logistics must become something for everyone, for every company,
Yeah.
not only for the big ones.
No, just super interesting here. Beside the green logistic thing, you already started to mention some, best practice from operational perspective, to add up on global value chain. Are there any other trends, any other things you want to highlight as, just a couple of them that you think are value in terms of differentiators in the global value chains today?
From an operations perspective, you mean?
Yes,
Yeah, for sure. As we said, companies are trying to shorten and regionalize their supply chain, and this means two things. First, as we mentioned, trying to plan to have more sources for their goods. We are talking about factories, we're talking about warehouses, so building
yes,
stock as well,
yes,
which brings a little bit of inefficiency in the system, but
yes. And
allows
redundancy, of course.
to shorten the supply chain and sourcing as well. So we are talking
Yes,
about the whole thing. Companies are taking more care about where their products are, where the raw materials are coming from.
especially from coronavirus. I noticed this trend.
That's correct.
The strategic supplier, in terms of, especially for strategic suppliers, there's not only like the one supplier only, because it's a big risk, maybe big convenience, but big risk. And especially if a vessel, stop in Suez
Correct.
Canal, you stop the entire production there. So yes, so diversification of risk in terms of risk management for resiliency, as you said on
Correct.
top of this
Correct.
interview, is one thing.
Correct.
Correct.
So adopt multi-sourcing strategies even for
Yes.
raw materials, which is good also for sustainability because the consumers they can decide what to buy and what not to buy, and they are more and more paying attention to where the raw materials are coming from, especially in the US. In the US, this I saw this trend growing a lot in the last few years. The US consumers before they were less, they took less care about that, but now in the US as well, this is starting. So is this coming from an ethical sourcing method? Is this coming from the other side of the world, or is this coming from a place that is close to here, so we can minimize the emissions? Yes, that's an operations point. And maybe another one that it's probably a little bit more technical, but I see this impact. Companies are doing more integrated business planning. What does it mean? They are embedding supply chain before 2020, before the last 5 years, supply chain and finance, they were two different things. Now they are trying to plan their supply chains together with their money.
In a financial way.
Exactly. In the last few years after COVID, we all know that the interest rates are going up, so the attention to cash it's more and more important.
Super important. Yeah.
And I think integrated business planning, aligning supply chain, value chain, and finance and money, I think this is another operational trend that I see in this period.
That is amazing. And so yes, let me chime in here, and let's talk about stakeholders. Finance is, of course, a stakeholder. There's an internal stakeholder. Okay, if from your perspective, supply chain, company, finance, other function is another, like, internal stakeholder. In terms of a broader point of view, stakeholders, which are, the main stakeholders you can consider, you can mention, like maybe more on the client, maybe more in terms of investor, maybe more on, which are the most important ones determining the dynamics, the key points on the market?
Good question. Yes, finance is an internal stakeholder, but there are many external stakeholders that are maybe more important. The main one you mentioned, which is the consumers,
Of
final
course.
consumers, especially in the food and beverage sector,
Mm.
consumers and consumption habits.
Exactly.
Consumers are the stakeholders. Consumers can decide what and what not to purchase, and this is the key to do business. And in the last few years, we've seen some trends in the food and beverage sector of consumption habits. For example, there is a big trend for healthy food and beverages, low fat, low sugar. The next trend that is coming is alcohol free. Alcohol free, it's still a small thing, but it's will become
It's coming up. It's
it's
coming up.
coming up. We already see this coming up in the next few years. But it's not only this. The consumer habits are changing a lot. They demand for more personalization, so they want more personalized product, and your supply chain needs to be fit to that. It needs to be adequate, and at the same time, for speed to serve consumers. We are in an era where you can have everything delivered at your door in a few hours. So
Yes.
if your company doesn't jump on board to this train and the train of digital buying and omnichannel buying, your main stakeholder is going to kill you. Real time inventory, fast last mile delivery. So there's a lot to do to please our main stakeholder. But the consumers are not the only one. The second most important one for me are regulators. So
Oh,
government
yeah.
and regulators with the tariffs already mentioned. And also in the sustainability field, but in many ways, regulators are influencing supply chains, giving a boost to a market or to another market, or preventing companies to source their raw materials in a certain way. So this is the second. Governments and regulators are the second most important stakeholder. But last but not the least, investors and financial institutions. And fortunately, now the decisions about companies financing, rating during acquisitions, for example, they are based more on the company's supply chain health and resilience, which is very good news from my perspective. So yeah,
Sure.
financial institutions are the third most important stakeholder.
No, sure. You mentioned now, emerging or maybe trends that you want to highlight in the supply chain management field. The question is now, which are the most important ones, you want to mention for excellence in supply chain management in current, turbulence and, turmoil, let me say, days.
To succeed, you mean? To succeed in this?
Yes, especially in your sector because, you are super vertical like food and beverage. So what do you see?
So let me think. I think the most important one to mention now is artificial intelligence. This is just starting. It will probably become more and more important in the next few years. But artificial intelligence is one of the critical factors for the supply chains to excel, especially in the food and beverage sector. For example, I can mention demand and inventory management in the food and beverage sector. It's a key to win in this turmoil in this particular period. And in my experience in food and beverage company, inventory management has always been a struggle because it requires very specific skills that companies sometimes don't have. So AI can really help doing so. The AI systems are getting more important, more reliable now. In planning transportation as well, we call them control towers. So this can be very important. So optimize transportation
Yeah.
can be a key, and AI can be really an enabler for that. And why not mention manufacturing? The AI and the Internet of Things tools can be really a game changer now for factories, for predictive maintenance, quality defects control, and also removing heavy activities from human beings with AI robots.
Very interesting. I would like to ask you, Lorenzo, if you have seen case studies, experiences of value chain restructuring that you kind of found to be particularly interesting. I don't know, maybe in the FMCG sector, in another sector. Basically, a case study that could be interesting for our audience.
Yes, I think I saw a big one in the food and beverage industry. Happened in the last 5, maybe more 10 years shift. And we're
Because
talking
this is also interesting, right? When we speak about supply chain, transforming a supply chain, it takes time. It's not like a
takes
project that you
time,
do in 1 year, right?
takes a lot of time, especially if you're a big company like the one I'm about to mention, because this company that I want to talk about is Nestlé, which is
Sure,
the
yeah.
biggest one actually. It's the biggest player in the food sector. Nestlé did a very, very good job doing this transformation. They went through a big journey to revolution their supply chain. As you said, it takes 5, 10, maybe even more years to revolution that. And in my opinion, Nestlé was able to do that and to do that all along the supply chain. So from farm to consumers. And that was really, really incredible. Nestlé, I will give some information for every part of the supply chain. Talking about sourcing, for example, Nestlé committed, I think it was by the end of 2025, if I'm not wrong, to be 100% deforestation free. All their
That's super
process
interesting.
and raw materials
Yeah,
has to have to come from don't have to
Certified
cause any
forest, yeah.
deforestation.
yeah.
And very interesting, regenerative farming, which is basically a new way to farm and to harvest to make sure the biodiversity is maintained and the land does not degenerate, which is good for the environment, but it's good also for the company because the quality of your raw materials is better.
Yeah.
Moving along the supply chain, they did a lot for traceability. I didn't
Traceability.
mention before, but traceability it's another key success factor to excel in this period. Companies must know where their products are and where their products are coming from because the consumers start asking for it. And the Nestlé implemented using also Internet of Things sensors we mentioned before in the fields to have a barcode in a lot of their products with which the consumers can see scanning the barcodes where the products are coming from, which is
Yeah.
great for
First,
what
yeah.
the consumers are asking about. And they implemented some of the AI applications already we discussed before to track and trace the inventory levels, predictive analysis, and packaging. How not to mention that?
Yes.
Nestlé went through an incredible journey to change their packaging, which involves investments,
Of
of
course.
course. And they have, I don't want to say all because I don't know if they are all, but a lot of recyclable. The majority of their packs is recyclable and coming from recyclable sources. And last but not least, as we said, they had to please their main stakeholder, so the consumer, and they did a big shift in their product portfolio to catch these
The new
the
trends.
consumers changing habits. If you look at Nestlé product portfolio 20 years ago and now, you will see a very different thing. So healthier, more plant-based, low sugar products. So I think this is a great example of supply chain
Really good story.
transformation.
No, thank you for sharing. I guess, Lorenzo, we could speak with you forever, but I'm conscious that this is a podcast and at a certain point we need to stop. So I would like to go with a one final question for you.
The crystal ball time.
Exactly, the crystal ball time
Crystal ball,
is
okay.
kind of looking at the future because I guess we discussed, what has been happening in the recent years, what is important for value chains today. I guess if you try to look at, maybe what could be the situation, let's say 5 years from now, do you recognize the same topics being the topics, new topics, all the topics?
All the
Or what do you imagine?
So, what do I imagine? Topics are more or less the same. I don't see other big things coming, even if I don't have the crystal ball, but they will evolve a lot and in a different
Exactly.
way. The main one I already mentioned, but is artificial intelligence, guys, because this is really a big thing. And even if everyone talks about it in the news, we are still in an initial stage of adoption in the companies, especially in the small ones. When I was a consultant, I worked with a lot of small companies, so with less money to invest in these tools. The adoption is still very, very early, very
Limited.
limited. In the next 5-7 years, if they don't jump on this train, it's gonna be hard to keep the pace. So I think this is the main
The
factor,
main
the
possible
main thing.
disruptor.
Yeah, the disruptor for all the reasons that we mentioned.
Yeah,
Geopolitical situation is the second one. This
yeah.
is the one we really need the crystal ball, because
Oh
it's
yeah.
difficult to say, but that's the second main contributor,
Yeah.
main game changer. The consumer habits will change,
Oh yeah.
more. As I said, alcohol free, it's an example.
In the sector, yeah.
And in the US, this is still happening. In the US, especially outside of the big cities, the big wave of the healthy, low sugar
Is happening.
food still has to come. So that's
Yeah.
another point. Sustainability, we already mentioned, and we already discussed about it. This will become bigger and bigger because of all the regulations, because of what's happening with the extreme events, but also because the younger generations are more
Asking for that.
focused.
Yeah.
So sustainability, and there is another factor that I didn't mention, but I think it's worth to mention. It will become more important in the next years, which is cybersecurity. Cybersecurity, a lot of companies don't invest in cybersecurity, and I think this could be a big topic for the next few years, because wars are not going to be, well, are going to be fought on the field, but also over the network. And I've seen, unfortunately, a few examples of companies that were destroyed by cyber attacks. So companies will need to invest more on cybersecurity in the next few years.
Definitely a topic. Thank
Yeah,
you, Lorenzo.
absolutely. No, this was brilliant. Thank you very much, Lorenzo, for
Thank
joining
you,
our
guys.
show, and congratulations for the good work you are doing and we look forward to speak again soon.
Thank you, guys. It was a pleasure to being your guest, and looking
Amazing.
forward to the next time.
Thank you, Lorenzo.
Bye bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed this discussion, we invite you to like and share this episode on your social media. Enjoy the rest of your day.